Welcome to
Path of Exile 2
Champion Spotlight, featuring
Pathfinder.
the Mad Chemist.
Pathfinder is a mobile ranger who excels at spreading deadly poison, dealing
tons of damage
during a fight. Decompose is a unique item skill. When running over a dead enemy, it will trigger a poison cloud, dealing damage over time to enemies inside it. Vine Arrow creates a blooming flower on the ground that slows and deals chaos damage to any enemy within its range. Shield Charge lets you charge towards enemies, knocking them back on collision. Pathfinder's ultimate is Poisonous Concoction, which throws out chemicals inflicting poison on hit, dealing
tons of damage.
Skål and hello! If you finally, after 15 years of masochism, managed to escape your League of Legends addiction and wish to try out something new, but quitting cold turkey is a bit too difficult for you, I got just the thing to wean yourself off it. Heh, wean. As a Pathfinder, we can not only assimilate the League of Legends champion Singed, but also the toxicity levels of the League community. Using Poisonous Concoction to throw chemicals and Blooming Vines to cause a slow effect, we have Singed W with the Corpse Sweat Boots. Put on my Corpse Sweat Boots and a sacrifice and a quick weapon swap, we can kinda get his Poison Trail. Unfortunately, there ain't no fling-like ability, but having knockback on a Dancing Wind or having a shield charge gives similar results with a knockback. To the gems!
To shake or not to shake?
First up, we got the reason we can make a Singe build to begin with. From the unique boots, Corpse Sweat Iron Greaves, put on my course. Okay, that's enough. I can spread a poison cloud. These boots gives us the Decompose skill, whose level scales off of the level of the boots. Higher level boots will give more links and higher level spell. The way Decompose works is that it deals damage based off of max life of the corpse that is getting targeted by Decompose. And pop that corpse like Kog'Maw pops himself with a passive. Sorry if you never played League, there's gonna be a few references in this video. When the corpse pop, a poison cloud will spread out from it and all we have to do is walk. That's it. This skill trigger on normal movement. To increase the damage, we tag on a concentrated effect for 40% more area damage while losing 50% area effect. We're going to constantly be walking across other fallen champions, creating new clouds over and over, so the reduced area effect is not a big deal. We will also add comorbidity to increase the number of poison stacks we can inflict by 1, but because of our Ascendancy, this will add 2 more poison stacks. This gem could potentially also be used in our Poisonous Concoction to absolutely maximize our damage output with our main poison skill. For normal mobs, Concoction kills everything instantly before even reaching max stacks, so it's only really good for like bosses or certain rares. What you could do is change things around specifically for bosses. Persistence is something we would normally use for our curse since we want as long uptime of the resistance reduction as possible, but for this build, having it in Decompose to have the poison clouds linger longer feels a lot better. But once again, this is something that could be switched around for bosses specifically, since reduced resistance is more important in those cases. The last gem is something you could switch for whatever feels better for you. I use Bursting Plague here since you must have an ability that poisons to get its effect, and the only other skills we have that this support gem could work well on is our Poisonous Concoction, but we already have every link full with other gems to increase its poison damage, and Poisonous Concoction is better suited for a few strong enemies rather than a bigger group. So I feel like we get the most bang for your buck with using Bursting Plague on Decompose. Poisonous Concoction is our main damage dealer and boss killer. To make sure we can effectively apply as many poison stacks as possible, as fast as possible, we'll first use Scatter Shot for more projectiles. Since this is our main poison damage, we put in Deadly Poison to increase the magnitude by 75%. This support gem is a good example of why you shouldn't always get hung up on the DPS number to the side, because with this support gem we decrease damage by 25%. But if we click the arrow and open up the the information window, we can see a clear increase in poison damage when using deadly poison. So when switching out any gems, this is the damage number you need to keep track of and not the main DPS one. Chaos Infusion just straight up increase our poison damage by 25%, since this skill only deals chaos damage and the 50% less non-chaos damage doesn't matter at all. And lastly, we use Chaos Mastery for an extra level in the skill. Poisonous Concoction scaled the best with extra levels, and since it uses mana flask charges instead of mana, any mana consumption issues with higher level skills doesn't exist here. Vine Arrow will be our designated Singe W skill. Both as in for League, you click W to use that skill, and the Vine Arrow is a W skill. It's really nice. Vine Arrow will cause a flower to bloom at the target location and slow all enemies around it.
None will escape my grasp.
And if you think a flower doesn't quite feel right for Singe's W ability, you could always pretend that Wish.com Poison Ivy is supporting you. I'm sorry, that was toxic. My inner League showed. By poisoning this flower, which will happen all the time, since we will constantly be surrounded by poison clouds, the flower will deal extra chaos damage through its vines. First support gem will be Encumbrance to increase the slow magnitude for stronger slow effect. We'll use Maim to further increase the slow. This, however, is on hit, so you will only get this effect if you hit the enemy with a skill and not through damaging vines. It is, however, good for rares and bosses to aim and hit them, since not only do we slow them, they also get decreased evasion rating. After that, we add in the Swift Affliction support gem, which increases damage over time for non-ailment damage by 35%. Since Vine Arrow doesn't deal poison damage but chaos damage, which doesn't count towards ailments, this skill gem raises its damage greatly. The final slot that I'm utilizing isn't super important, you could skip this link, but if you want a little something extra, you can add in one of the font support gems. Font of Blood for extra life sustain, Font of Rage for more damage, or Font of Mana for more mana regen.
Now learn despair.
Why does the demons in my head sound like Aatrox? Despair is this build's specific curse, as it will reduce chaos resistance by 32%. As always, try to have this skill be as low level as possible, as higher levels only gives diminishing returns. We'll use some standard support gems for curses, which is Heightened Curse for greater curse effect and Focus Curse for faster activation. Chaos damage doesn't have exposure, but it does have a similar effect called Withered. Wither increases chaos damage by 5% for each stack and can normally stack up to 10 times. To effectively apply Wither to many enemies and effectively increase the stacks, we will use Dark Effigy. Dark Effigy fires projectiles on nearby enemies afflicted by chaos damage, meaning this totem will target every poison enemy nearby it and fire projectiles on them. The best use of this fact, we will use the Wither Touch support gem. This makes it so every projectile will apply Wither on hit. We will also use Arcane Tempo to increase its cast speed, making it fire faster. The final gem is not super important, but here you could add in Ancestral Urgency for faster placement of the totem, or you could add in one of the font support gems for more sustain. The next skill isn't necessary at all. You can absolutely play without it, since you will have to invest in more strength and are already running thin on intelligence and dexterity, so do not bother with this if you can't reach the attribute requirements for everything else. But I added Shield Charge to really go into the theme of Singe, who does run around with a shield, and the charge with this is really fun to play with and gives nice mobility to get around the maps. Also with a knockback on collision and added on support gems, Overpower for 50% more stun buildup and Ruthless for 500% more stun buildup on every 5th use, we can kinda simulate a fling, which is Singe E ability. Shield Charge will be used with weapon set 2, since weapon set 1 will be Bow and Quiver, however. Going into the Spirit Gems, we use Plague Barrier, of course, as it works really well with our poison build and gives us a panic button to use every now and then for massive AoE poison. To increase the AoE, we will use Magnified Effect, and to stay a bit mobile when using the skill, we add on Mobility. The final gems will be Physical Mastery, since Plague Barrier counts as a physical skill, and the amount that can be stored, meaning more max damage, will increase with more skill levels. If you have more links and more than 100 spirits, you could also add in extra passive support gems like Cannibalism, Vitality, and Clarity. This applies to each spirit skill used for weapon set 1 kinda. Second spirit gem will be Wind Dancer. We are investing in evasion greatly, so increasing that with Wind Dancer is great. On top of that, we can use Unbreakable and Blind to increase survivability, and when we get hit, Wind Dancer activates Gale Force, dealing damage and knocking enemies back. The final spirit gem we will use for weapon set 1 is Ghost Dance. Although we mostly focus on evasion, we will have some amount of energy shield, and instantly regaining energy shield based on our evasion rating increases our survivability, especially when we're taking multiple hits. Fast forward will make it so we can gain Ghost Shrouds faster, and other than that, you could use any empty slot for things like, once again, Cannibalism, Vitality, Clarity, as mentioned earlier, if you have extra spirit to spare. The final skill gems overall will be active in weapon set 2. As a Singe theme build, we want to activate Poison Trail whenever we want and not just be to the whim of our enemy's corpus. To fix this, we will use Sacrifice. What Sacrifice does is that it makes us able to use corpse-based abilities on minions. No support gems are necessary for this skill, we just want the ability itself as is. Now that we can put on our corpse wear shoes and activate Decompose on our minions, we need the best skeleton for the job. Decompose's damage scale with corpses max life, or in our case, our minions max life. And as far as I know, skeletal brutes have the highest potential for greatest max life, since its quality bonus increases max life by 20%. Added on to that, we can also use Meat Shield for another 50% increase in max life. For a little cherry on top, we can also use Minion Mastery for one more minion level. The higher the level of our brutes, the higher their max life is gonna be, which means more decomposed damage. To be able to have as many brutes as possible, we will use a scepter with our shield for the weapon swap, which, you know, will lead to a little bit investment in strength anyway, so it depends on really how much you wish to invest in strength. I mean, max life is good because we're not using something like Chaos Inoculation anyway, so more survivability as well.
Shaken, not stirred.
When taking a look at the skill tree, the pathing will be quite simple. We'll just be going straight for poison nodes and evasion nodes for the most part. We start with the route of projectile damage, since poisonous concoction counts as a projectile and gets increased damage from this stat, going right to honed instincts for more attack and projectile speed. Further ahead, we get Clean Shot with Pierce chance is unfortunately useless for us, but the increased projectile damage is very nice. From Clean Shot, we go into one of our more important nodes, which is Master Fletchling, and all nodes around it, increasing our quiver bonuses, which will vastly increase our damage, especially together with our bow, which I will go into later when going through the gear. Then we get to our first poison nodes, which is Lasting Toxins for more poison duration and Stacking Toxins for +1 max stacks of poison on enemies. Although this reduces magnitude, having one extra poison will more than make up for it. So far we gotten a lot of damage going, so from here let's spend a little few points into our defenses and take escape velocity for evasion and movement speed, along with freedom of movement, which gives increased evasion and further increased evasion when dodge rolling. Alright, enough of skilling into boring defense nodes. Let's get back on track with fast acting toxins to increase the speed that our poison ticks, and wasting for longer duration and increased damage with hits against enemies affected by ailments. The final node in this direction will be Deterioration, which is a bit defensive with limiting the damage ailments we can be afflicted by to 1 at a time, but more importantly, increase magnitude of damaging ailments by 20%. Switching over to the other side, Crippling Toxins increases our magnitude and gives our attacks a chance to maim on hit against poison enemies. Although not a mana-hungry build, there is potential for mana issues since we do not focus on mana at all, so to make up for this we will go to Siphon so we can get mana back each time we kill an enemy. In the same area we can also go for Blinding Strike to get a chance for our attacks to blind our enemies and also gain increased attack damage, since our Concoction does count as an attack. Subterfuge Mask gives evasion based off of maximum energy shield on equipped helmets, meaning we will get more survivability. Low Tolerance increase the effect of the first poison we inflict on enemies, which will have us kill normal enemies very fast. Branching off for a moment, Leeching Toxins increase our magnitude with 30%, which is a massive increase in damage, and also give us good life sustain when killing poison enemies. Further up we got Kite Runner, which increases movement speed, projectile speed, and projectile damage, which is just all around good for us. Now once again we focus more on damage, so let's bring it back and have a little more survivability. With Enhanced Reflexes we increase evasion rating and get a little bit of a percentual dexterity increase, while Bestial Skin give us 100% increased evasion rating from our body armor, which will be insanely good together with another node further ahead. We do use acrobatics, but do not pick this node up until you have at least 70% evasion with acrobatics, which I think is around 90% without it, because otherwise it's not gonna be that useful. Moving further north on the tree, we'll pass and pick up Dark Entries for more chaos damage and +1 level of chaos skills. Since poison deals chaos damage and our poison skills count as chaos skills, this is a good damage increase. Then we go to the final poison nodes with Escalating Toxins, where up to 100% we get 10% increased poison duration for each stack inflicted. And with Building Toxins, that gives us yet another +1 to our max poison stack, making it 3 total at the moment. Going over to the monk side of things, we'll get Spectral Ward, which gives maximum energy shield based on the evasion rating of our body armor, making it the perfect combo with our previous Bestial Skin node. Now that we have all the most important part and the build is up and running fully, we can use our last points for a little extra evasion and extra projectile damage with Blur, Cat-like Agility, and Heavy Ammunition. You can go 2 ways with the Ascendancy point order. You can start with Poisonous Concoction, as it is our main damage ability, and then go for Contagious Contamination, followed by the most important Ascendancy node, Overwhelming Toxicity, which doubles our max poison stacks, meaning the 3 max poison we have through the skill tree is now 6, and for the skill we have comorbidity in, it's 8. With this we will absolutely melt bosses and watch their life
ticks away.
Alright Oriana, this isn't bring daughter to chemical war crime day. The other order could be to go for Overwhelming Toxicity first and use Gas Arrow until you unlock points 5 and 6 for Poisonous Concoction. The last points, however, will always be Traveler's Wisdom for 6 more skill points. This is the least important, but will give nice extra bonuses towards the end of the build when using the skill points for the last evasion and projectile damage nodes. When of course for the jewels you would want the Adorned Diamond. If every other jewel with the correct stats is corrupted, this will increase the effect of all those jewel sockets' passive skills, which is just a massive increase in stats altogether, so that unique jewel would be really good to have along with everything else. But for the normal jewels, what you would want to go for is of course Magnitude of Poison and Magnitude of Ailments, and then increased bonus to Equipped Quiver. Those are the 3 most important and main stats. Now for other stats that wouldn't be too bad to have, especially if you can gain extra stats through corruption, could be damaging ailments deal damage faster, increase attack speed, and increased movement speed.
Mix, mix, swirl, mix.
Most of the damage we'll get from the gear will be solely from Quiver combined with the unique bow. So except for some uniques, the rest of the gear can focus on resistances and reaching attribute requirements. Must-have uniques for the build are Widow Hill to increase bonuses from our Quiver and Corpsewed Iron Greaves for the Decompose skill. Uniques that help the build to make it stronger is Snakebite Spine Bracers, which gains +1 to poison stack, and in our case, +2. And Chevron's Satchel for flask charges per second, which is good since Poisonous Concoction uses mana flask charges instead of mana. And Intelligence helps with requirements, and finally having Life Flask also apply to Energy Shield helps with survivability. For the helmet, we want pure energy shield helmet to scale with the subterfuge mask node, getting as much extra energy shield as possible with attributes and resistances. And you also want to have extra levels to minions, since that will give our brutes more life, making our Decompose do more damage. Body armor will be pure evasion to scale with spectral ward the best. Try to get as much evasion as possible and then as much resistances as possible. Our amulet can have any base, but having a solar amulet for a little extra spirit is nice if that extra spirit gives you an extra brute. Otherwise, we want more evasion, energy shield, spirit, extra projectile levels, plus to all attributes and elemental resistances. On our rings, we want to focus on increased chaos damage and extra physical damage to attacks. But other than that, we can go with the same stats as before, just focus on defenses and reaching requirements with resistances, evasion, energy shield, attributes, etc. If you don't have the unique belt, that is no problem, since it is not important for the build. Just go with a rare utility belt that has charm slots, life, mana, strength, and resistances. The important part is that our flask charges per second. On our weapon set too, we want a scepter for the extra spirit to get enough brutes for Decompose, as well as plus levels to minions to bump up their max life as high as possible. Getting the minions have increased life is fantastic as well. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but since we don't need much else, having reduced requirements isn't the worst if you have trouble reaching the stats for the scepter or shield. First and only time I will feel like that isn't the absolute worst dog crap item breaking stat. But here we are. For our shield, if you choose to use one, you could go with an energy shield and armor based shield with increase to attributes. Any other stats are a bonus but not necessary. You could also use the unique shield Leauge Rampart Tower shield, which doubles accuracy rating and blocking damage poisons the enemy as if dealing 100 chaos damage. This isn't super good, but it is on theme. And we don't really use the shield for its main purpose, it's more for mobility and the look. Thank you for watching this Path of Exile Champion Spotlight. Get out on your new rift and spread your toxicity on tier 15 plus maps instead of other people. Alright, bye bye.